and welcome to Because School Means More, the podcast where we explore what true inclusion looks like in schools and how we can make it a reality. Each episode will share real stories, practical strategies and insights from schools that are leading the way in inclusive education. Whether you're an educator, a parent or someone passionate about inclusion, this podcast is for you. Everyone is welcome here. Because School Means More is brought to you by the Inclusion Partnership. My name's Jo Wilkinson and I'm the Inclusion Partnership Manager and podcast host. I'm joined by some co-hosts and guests for each episode. Our mission is to create real change by building an inclusion movement, a network of schools and organisations committed to inclusive relationships and inclusive provision for every child. Join us as we break down barriers, share success stories and work together to build schools where everyone belongs.
Because school means more.
Here we are, Phil, at the end of Series 2. Another great selection of schools that have been brave enough to come and share their stories. And now we're going to talk about the moments that moved us again. So we wanted to just summarise some real highlights from this series, of which there have been many. And we're really grateful for the schools that come forward and share their stories around inclusion.
We are. And I think if we just cast our mind back, we were very dubious about filming Series 1 and recording Series 1. And now the fact we're at the end of Series 2 and we've still got things that we would like to include moving forward and sharing that great practice, we're in a really, really strong position. But yeah, this series has been absolutely fabulous. And I think it's only right that we start working through it and start saying what are our highlights.
So let's start with a few highlights then around, I think for me, I'd love to talk a little bit about coaching circles. I think that's been a big emphasis of our work over the last 12 to 18 months in partnership with the virtual school, with Derby City Council. But it was really great to capture on film the schools that have been delivering coaching circles and where they've got to in terms of embedding that work. And some of them, the vision they've got for where they go next with this as well. But it was really lovely for us to be able to capture that as part of the podcast to see the difference that it's making.
Yeah, and I think the videos that have been filmed in 3 of those schools that are doing it are absolutely special as well with regards to, yes, it's brave leadership and yes, it's something different, but actually the community really enjoyed it. And then to kind of have that synopsis within the podcast was great. And I think from a personal point of view as well, it's really wonderful to hear that how those schools are actually using high level psychology. And I think it was Tom who talked about that kind of power imbalance and how coaching circles has done that thing of address that power imbalance, which is within the natural makeup of teaching, and how that's also making the circles really effective. Was kind of like, I'm not going to say blew my mind, but he's really, really encouraging to see. And it'll be fascinating to see what the data's like in 3 months' time and 6 months' time as they persevere with, let's be quite honest, for our area and our region, a completely novel strategy to education.
And it was interesting speaking to a range of school staff in terms of their role with coaching circles. And I think all of them shared the common concern around it being quite daunting to do something very different, how they came to the initial training and were in a room full of circles of chairs and no tables and a different way of working, and how they've then gone and developed that in their own school setting. But what was really lovely was then hearing them talk about, actually, I love it and it's the best thing that we've ever done. And I think Jane put it across brilliantly, talking about, I don't necessarily have the data at this stage to know it's working, but I can just feel that it's working. Yeah. So for me, that's been a real highlight.
Yeah, definitely something special that we've done.
Let's have a little listen.
It all really started with my head teacher going on to some training run by the Inclusion Partnership, and he experienced Tom and Carl Manor, visited Carl Manor School, and he was just blown away by the circles concept and the circles idea. Over the last decade or so, we're losing that ability to build those relationships just naturally. So we're doing this deliberately now to try and encourage children, for instance, to make eye contact, to take turns, to listen actively, to ask questions. So that's the benefit that we feel we're going to start seeing as time goes on with our circles.
Our coaching circles are called super circles, and the teachers in it are really nice, and they ask how your week's gone, any ups and downs. And at the start of every day, they always give us a starting question, like, would you rather be in Hogwarts or live in Narnia? This week's question was, would you rather spend a year in your favourite book, or a year with one of your favourite characters from living at your house?
These questions really cheer me up sometimes. Just tells you that someone cares about you.
I haven't got any data to show it's working. I can just feel it's working. How they seem to really sort of care for each other, all the different year groups. I'd like to think we had that before, but I feel like it's even more at the moment. I think we have been brave, because when you think that we're taking 3 times a week out of our timetable, it sounds a lot. When you think, staff are still trying to fit the rest of the curriculum in, and we're asking them to then come away from that, I think you do have to be really brave and go for it. And already we've only been doing it for half a year, and already I can see the benefits, and I just know that they'll continue and get better.
Yeah, I think one of mine is David Braybrooke and the podcast that we did with him. And I think David's is slightly different. And yes, he talked about some of the wonderful things that are taking place in his school. But for me, there was a really beautiful part where David talked about his own personal journey. And I think he used the phrase about getting out of his own way.
Yeah.
And it was a fascinating thing not only to listen to, but I think out of all the podcasts, that's one of the things that I have thought about for literally weeks and months afterwards, with regards to have such a deep level of personal challenge within one person. How we could get that across all of our sector would be really, really, really fascinating. And I know the reality of it is that we can't do that, but actually I just love the opportunity to challenge my own thinking about some things, and how we all feel uncomfortable at times, but David's journey through feeling uncomfortable, but actually then saying, well, why am I feeling uncomfortable? I'm being ridiculous about this, and therefore I'm just going to get on with it, and actually now doing, that's his life.
And that light bulb moment that he had when he realised that mainstream, I think primary education was not his thing, despite he kind of thought that was the case, but how enlightening it was when he then went into the world of special schools, and he's never looked back since.
So yeah, I think our listeners should definitely go back to that one.
Imagine that wasn't our approach. Imagine we had a one-size-fits-all, here's our curriculum. You start on this page, day one, like book 1, page 1, teach this. Imagine we did that. You'd be cutting out... You'd just be putting a brick wall against their future. So it's really important that we get out of the way and facilitate and scaffold and support and empower and advocate and champion. That's our role. And this is absolutely no slight on the school or on the system or on the structure. This is just my personal experience, is that I got to the year 3 in primary education mainstream, and in the January I just handed my notice in. And their teacher was like, well, why handed you notice in? I said, well, it just wasn't what I thought it was. And then I went on supply to pay the mortgage, because you've got to, whilst I just figured I had a bit of a life crisis. And just the stars aligned for me to go to a Derby City special school at the time. And when you stand out of your own way and have a look at why that is like it is, why the young people are acting like they are, what's their backstory, what is their element of need, what has not been met for them, what's going on with the families, and you start to think about how can you empower and remove those barriers. I was like, I'm going to be retiring in special education. I know I am. And I know that is the case.
Another great episode for me was the one where we had our alternative provision here, Derby Pride Academy, and we talked about finding belonging. And obviously this was for children that had been to mainstream school, and for whatever reason that hadn't quite worked out for them. What were those children experiencing to sort of re-find that sense of belonging? One thing Mark put across brilliantly as the head at DPA was about unconditional acceptance, and how every day was a fresh start. So every day those young people went in, they were welcomed, they were quickly given that sense of belonging at that school, and it was a truly relational approach that they were embedding. And through the interviews that we did as part of the Youth Voice piece of work as well, that really came across that when we interviewed young people that were at DPA, they talked in a very mature way about their experience of education prior to going to DPA, but talked about how, as a result of being in that setting, they'd really started to find their place and get to know themselves, but also feel that they could belong and thrive in that setting as well, which was great.
And often on their induction meeting, when they come to see DPA for the first time, it's like, the question I get is, you're not going to ring me every day with bad news, are you? And I'm like, I am going to ring you, but we're going to ring you about the positives that your child's had. My mentality, which all my staff are doing and they've all brought into, which is absolutely brilliant, they have 5 lessons a day. If they have 1 negative lesson, let's concentrate on the 4 positives. And that's the feedback that's really, really important. Yeah. And it's about that pride that they've actually got.
You know, every day is a fresh start. The students realise that very quickly. Right. There's a lot of open communication. And if things go wrong, for example, one day and there's, the teacher might meet with a student the next day, we have a chat about things, and the student knows that they are respected and that we will listen to their voice. They have a voice. We listen to their voice.
I used to get told off a lot because of like walking around school, but the only reason why I wasn't in lessons as much is because I didn't get the help that I'm meant to be getting. I get more help here and support and actually the attention that I need, like learning, working and all that.
So Time to Talk was a really interesting one that will definitely stick with me, where we talked Pear Tree Infant School.
Definitely one of my favourites. In fact, they're all my favourites, but definitely one of my favourites.
But the passion that came through that was really evident, wasn't it? And they absolutely wanted to address the needs of their community.
And I think for me, we talk about, and you hear the phrase brave leadership, but I think one thing that was really evident that they'd spotted an area that needed to have some form of, I'm not going to necessarily say the word improvement, but they'd spotted a barrier for their young people. They'd come up with a really, really brave strategy, and then they'd make sure that they'd embedded it
across the whole school.
Across the whole school for everybody, and they'd spent a lot of time on training. And actually, there's so many things, we Joe, are in a really privileged position to listen to these things and talk to people and elicit that information out of them. But it's so true that, our young people are not going to be able to read or write about things if they can't articulate it and they can't verbalise that. And the kind of strategies they've put in place and the whole philosophy behind their Time to Talk for me was really, really enlightening. And yet again, it's one of those things that I went away and I thought about, well, actually, within my own school and within my own school setting, is this something that potentially we could weave in as well? Let's listen to it.
Time to Talk is amazing. It is amazing, first and foremost. It allows the children to talk, and that's what we are about. We are about removing all barriers to learning and education, and we believe that through talk, that happens. Children talk all the time, so we want to foster that, and it starts the minute they come into our classroom. So every classroom, and every teacher has a meet and greet. So as soon as they enter the classroom, they sit on the carpet, sit at the tables, eyes to eyes, knees to knees, talking about something that they are interested in. And I think that's the key.
But before children can learn to read with meaning or write with confidence, one of the things they've got to be able to is articulate their thoughts. And I think the second rationale is oracy being rooted in inclusion and equity. Children come to our school with a wide range of language experiences. And for some, school is the only place where rich language structures can be heard and practiced. So one of the things I would say is that in terms of children hearing that language, repeating that language and learning a language, we have got deliberate and consistent aspects and elements involved in the school day that allow children to talk.
Another infant school that we had in was to talk about family engagement and very much around collaboration. And we had a really lovely conversation with Oakwood Infant School that we're here to talk about their work that they do throughout the year to make sure that they're linking with parents and families to provide that best support. And I loved the phrase that they came out with, which was growing together, shining forever.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
So let's have a little bit of a listen to some of their content.
As a head teacher, always my thing, and the children know this and staff know this, is about giving children choice when they're older. I don't, whatever they do, absolutely would love to hear what they're doing as they become adults and grow up. But as long as what they're doing is a choice, and they've been able to make those choices. Our tagline and our vision is around growing together, shining forever. That actually for that short space of time, we're growing together, staff, families, children, everybody together. But then actually the things that we're instilling in those children and those families, like I spoke about the networks, are going to help them to shine forever.
An important bit of the work for this series has definitely been capturing youth voice. And for me, that's something that really will stick with me. And I left with a smile on my face every time we went round to interview young people. Really lovely for us to meet Olivia in her role as youth mayor. And I'm sure that she will make a great difference over the next year.
Yeah, I think we all know that understanding what our parents and what our young people think is really, really important. It's part of that really effective co-production, which a lot of people are aware with the phrase, but actually us weaving it into our inclusion work's really, really important. I loved listening to Olivia, particularly about her, why she became a youth mayor, and she talked about the struggle she had herself. But I think from a personal point of view, just listening to her articulating on behalf of, a large number of pupils across Derby City about what works for her in school. And there were some really, really important messages about, it's the simple things, a smile, saying hello, being positive, are the kind of traits that don't take a lot of talent, but actually are really, really important. And then she even delved into thinking about, activities that good schools do are making students feel safe. We're looking at ambassador programs, looking at how students then have their own voice within each individual school. And then even she delved into the detail of looking at interlessons and, students being really, really articulate about the fact that they like interactive lessons, they don't like PowerPoints, and where people just talk over it, and that kind of like passive element to education. So for me, that was really, really fascinating to almost remind ourselves about that kind of, good practice, and making sure that we put it in place within our schools to make ourselves as inclusive as we could be.
Let's have a listen.
I think the teacher just not being passive sometimes. They just read off the PowerPoint, and I think making it more interactive and making it seem like it's coming from them would be a lot more useful and more engaging for students. I think even those little small things that cost absolutely nothing, like smiling, just greeting, actually mean a lot to people. It embodies a positive atmosphere and environment in the school.
And I'm just going to mention one particular young person that I met that was amazing when we talked about inclusion and what their perspective was. But I loved the fact that naturally they just looked straight down the camera and told us that they got a message that they wanted to give out to teachers, which was all about keep being you and keep being amazing. So let's have a quick listen to that one.
Don't change. Be where you want to be and be the best that you can possibly give to a student.
An interesting story was the one where we filmed the podcast with Landau Forte Academy Moorhead and Derby County Community Trust that were talking about that collaboration, so the work with outside agencies coming in to deliver programmes in schools. And they were great talking about togetherness. We're all one team, working hard and playing hard, and every child finding an activity that they enjoyed taking part in. But what was really powerful about that was the evidence the school shared about the impact, the positive impact that's had on their attendance, and the difference that that's making and the direct correlation from that.
Yeah, and it's I'm not going to say it's rare, but obviously within schools, we're always looking for qualitative and quantitative data to kind of disprove or prove the strategies that we put in place at work. But the data that they had around that was absolutely mind-blowing.
And showed it's working.
Definitely.
Let's have a quick listen.
And that's our biggest goal, is we want every child to come to school and say, I want to be here, I enjoy being here, I feel like I belong here. And a big part of that is through sport. And we try really hard to get every child involved in it as much as we can. But now that we can access even more programs within Derby County, it's been amazing to see how many more children access all of that.
I've started to introduce the miss school, miss out element of that. And one of the children said to me yesterday, we'd gone swimming on the bus home, and he was like, Miss, you know that miss school, miss out thing you do? I'd miss out on swimming if I wasn't here. So it's that earworm, it's getting into them as well. So it's looking at, this works on a Tuesday, what can we do on the other days, especially a Friday? And there we are, that's series 2 done, Phil, and
Can't believe it.
I know, I can't believe it either. So here we are. Do you think there'll be a series 3?
I think if we go back to, what we're trying to achieve, that there is so much great practice that goes on across Derby City, and wider. I'm not just saying it's all about Derby City, but that's where our home is. And we've celebrated so many, and we've got lots more people already coming out and saying, we've got this we'd like to show, and we've got that we'd like to show. So for me, it would be really amazing for us to do a series 3. And of course, it's a joy working with you, Jo.
As always, but I think for me, what's been great has been having some new schools come and join us for this set of series. So it's not always about hearing from the same schools. And I think for us, that shows that there are a lot of schools across the city that have got some great practice to be able to share. And I'm really confident that there'll be another batch of schools that will be willing and able to come and join us if we do a future series. So we'll wait and see. But we've got some exciting times coming up as well for the work of the Inclusion Partnership, haven't we?
You could say that.
So we've got a conference coming up where we will launch this latest series. That's always an exciting day and a special day, a real flagship event for us each year for us to reflect on where we've come in the last 12 months. But also to look ahead in terms of where we're going next.
And I think also how the Inclusion Strategy Group and the Inclusion Partnership is becoming more aligned with local authority, and I will say that, and how we're working together to put some I'm not going to say policies, but put some processes and protocols in place that's going to be able to help all schools. We've got the Inclusion Graduate Response, we're going to launch the Reflection Toolkit, which is an exciting piece of work. So there's lots of things in the background, but I know where you're angling.
You know exactly what I'm thinking, which is 27th of November 2026 is our citywide Inclusion Day, where we've got the best part of 2,600 people. I think pretty much every seat is taken in the venue, where we will talk about inclusion, everyone, every day, everywhere, and the role that everybody in a school setting and wider organisations plays to ensure that every child can belong and succeed at school. So real privilege and lucky that I get to do this job and get to work with you, and excited to see where we go next year.
Indeed.
Thank you very much. Thanks for listening, everybody. That's a wrap for this episode of Because School Means More, brought to you by the Inclusion Partnership. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights, ideas and inspiration to help make schools more inclusive for everyone. Real change happens when we work together. So, if you're inspired by what you heard today, we'd love for you to be part of the inclusion movement. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share this episode with colleagues and connect with the Inclusion Partnership. Thanks for listening.
Because school means more.